Shirt for you too.
Purple. Thank you. Oh, I think we're live. My little
Oh,
intro video didn't play.
that's okay.
Okay, all right.
Jump right in it.
I think we're jumping right in. People sometimes complain about the intro video. I guess it didn't play. Hey, everybody. It's Friday night. Joe and I were hanging out here chit-chatting, was waiting for the intro video to play, and it didn't play. Well, guess what? I'm Angenette Levy. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, welcome. If you have, welcome back. Please like, give me that thumbs up, subscribe, and shoot me a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you're watching on replay, thank you so much. Joe, we're going to be talking about Bryan Kohberger. Sentencing day is approaching, and he wanted to work for a police department. He wanted to be a cop even when he was younger, and we're going to get into it in a minute. But first of all, I want your reaction, Joe Giacalone. And Joe, he hosts the True Crime with the Sarge YouTube channel. And Joe, you worked for the NYPD for a really long time. You worked on cold cases. You were a sergeant, obviously. You were the boss. Your reaction, first of all, to the gag order being lifted, but before that, we read this book, the James Patterson book, and there's cops in there talking despite the gag order.
Well, I'll tell you, for a small department, I cannot believe how many leaks that there have been on this thing. Now, listen, I've been in a lot of major investigations. We had serial killer cases with, people with accused of killing 7 people and more sometimes, and not one thing gets leaked out to the news. I mean, the NYPD was very strict about leaks. Basically, if they caught you doing it, first of all, you're going to get disciplined. You could even get fired for it. But the other thing is, and I think was the real deterrence, that if you use your personal phone doing this, they would take your phone as evidence, and you'd have to wait for the district attorney to give you a release, right? So, a lot of departments say, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. No, listen, there are certain things that you can do to prevent this kind of behavior, because it pokes holes in the investigation, and it gives the defense
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to uncover some things, and it's just not the way to go. It's like taking crime scene photos and then sharing them online, which we've seen with a bunch of cases too going forward. Some states have even moved to make that a misdemeanor crime to boot. So it's disturbing.
I'm really glad that we didn't see what happened in the Delphi case with horrific crime scene photos of Abby and Libby being shown online. I'm glad
Mhm.
we didn't see that in this case, because there obviously that was possible because somebody was handing out evidence in this case, or maybe more than one somebody.
Well, I mean, that's really becomes detrimental to your case too when you actually have crime scene photos, because once again, you're providing the defense with the opportunity of saying, "Look at the sloppy investigation. Look what they did." And then like, if you can't attack the evidence in the case, you attack the cops. It's as simple as that. And it's just, from the former law enforcement background, and like I said, being a supervisor of major cases, this is something you're always worried about, that something gets leaked out to the media that you don't want to, because I tell you, you could blow a whole case.
Yeah, most definitely. I just want to let everybody know too. I'm trying to do something new. If people want to become members, that's great. I'm going to try to wait till the end if we get any new members. Super chats and super stickers, depending on how many we get. I'll wait maybe to the end, but I'll shout a couple of these out. If we get more and more viewers and more in the chat, I might wait. But Nikki, thank you so much for the super sticker. It's very sweet, very sweet. We are talking tonight about the Idaho Four case, and we're talking about Bryan Kohberger wanting to be a cop. And I thought it was important that we talk about this because there's been a couple of new things that have come out. Of course, the James Patterson and Vicky Ward book came out earlier this week. I'm still working my way through it. I wanted to give you guys more updates out of there, but I have been reading it, but I'm a little behind. It's like 400 some odd pages, and I have to work. I work at Law and Crime. We work every day. We're always churning stuff out, and so I interviewed Vicky Ward about it. She is lovely. We talked about the book. I'm still plowing through it, and there's a lot of interesting information in there. And today at Law and Crime, I interviewed Gary Jenkins, the chief of the Washington State University Police Department. He was the chief of the Pullman Police Department when Bryan Kohberger applied for an internship. And we're going to get there. We're going to talk about this in a second. But Joe, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge, and I forgot to do that at the very beginning when the intro music didn't play. It kind of threw me for a loop. But I want to take a moment to remember the victims here, because they are really what matters here. I mean, these four young people are not here right now, and we still don't have an answer as to why. I have my theory on what happened, and I think it's a solid theory, but I could be completely off base and wrong. But there's just no reason for these four kids not to be here.
No, I mean, I have my own theory too, just because that's what I used to do for a living, right? You sit with the detectives and you come up with your hypothesis. And listen, you always stick with the three main motives: love, money, and drugs. That's how you always start off an investigation when you're dealing with a homicide. And then you let the evidence dictate, your hypothesis in that respect, So you follow the evidence and you come to your conclusions. I believe the police have a firm grasp on why this happened. I think even they don't know 100% sure why this
Hmm.
happened, unless Bryan Kohberger tells us. We aren't going to know for sure, and I don't think there's any chance of that happening.
Really? So you don't think that he will one day, despite him coming out and pleading guilty, which seemed to be pretty surprising. I mean, he took this really far. I mean, we were weeks, a month away from jury selection when he decided to ask for a plea deal, and by all accounts that's what happened. He asked for a plea deal.
Yeah, I was taken off guard, just about everybody else. I didn't think that he would do that. Just like I don't think Rex Sherman's ever going to take a plea either. I just think that unfortunately, this guy does know a lot about some of the serial killers out there and some of the different things. And you've seen, I'm sure, people like Ted Bundy, who we know from that Dateline show that he was following, in
Mhm.
his footsteps, so to speak. But he also, you have BTK, where these guys stayed alive, they dodged the death penalty, and then strung law enforcement around for 30, 40 years after the fact, and being like the go-to person where people were going to go to. I'm sure there are psychologists, forensic psychologists, that are basically lining up to get a crack at Kohberger to find out exactly what makes him tick and all the different things that go along with it. It's just it becomes a research tool, and unfortunately, I think that that could be one of the issues behind all this.
um you know that's interesting. You say you think that could be one of the issues behind all this, that Brian Kohberger becomes a research tool. um do you think he's that complex though, and that interesting? Because he's not, in my opinion, like a BTK, where
No,
BTK got a lot. I mean, he is scary because he got away with it for a long time, and maybe it's because of the time that happened in, where technology wasn't as advanced, and but technology is what ended up nabbing him because of that floppy disk or whatever, or
right.
whatever the disk was called. But he was able to like be like this guy who went to church, and nobody suspected much of anything, I guess. He was active in his church, and he did this and he did that. Kohberger, at least, I mean, I'm sorry, but he's got a he's got a track record. It sounds like he was a hot mess. I mean, I give him kudos for being able to overcome the heroin addiction. That's tough. That's very commendable. But is he really that complex? If this was his first time committing a major crime, he got caught. He wasn't able to pull it off.
No, he wasn't able to pull it off, but still, there are people, there are researchers out there that are going to want to see, try to crack through the facade to see what they can find. I mean, he's still an interesting character for some people. Myself, I don't find him interesting at all. I just find him just like other people I've dealt with in occasion. He thought he was smarter than the cops. He thought he was, he studied a few things. And, because he was an academic and he was going for his PhD, that he was going to be able to pull this off. And I've explained this before. You can study and you could do everything you want, but that doesn't beat the person who's an experienced investigator. And I always tell my students, because I've been asked this a bunch of times, like, are you worried about, when you're teaching, are you worried about making better criminals? And I said, no, it's like I could give you a book on brain surgery, but you're not coming near my head with a scalpel. I'm sorry. You could get A's across your thing until you've passed your medical exams and you've done this before, and you're not coming near me. So there is a big difference between what you read in a book and what you do in real life.
Yeah, definitely. June Sidlauskas, thank you so much for gifting memberships. I'm going to shout those new members out at the end. I'm trying to change the way I do things here. But I really appreciate that. It's very sweet. And June, thank you for the thank you so much for the super chat as well. I enjoy supporting a new channel. Gifting memberships is a way to help a channel grow. Thank you so much. It's very sweet. And we have another Jessica Rushton has given us a super sticker. Thank you so much, Jessica. That's very sweet. And then S Dubs is asking Joe thoughts. I hear he just asked for the gag order to stay. Is this so he can make more money on a book or interviews? Well, I don't think that's the case, actually. His attorney asked for it to stay through the
Appeal
sentence.
process. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and actually, the judge even said about the appeal process too. So, because even though he's saying he can't appeal,
He
there's
can
still an
still
open,
appeal.
there's still an open window for that, right? So, I believe the judge said that the evidence that they have, whatever, is still going to stay on the wraps until that time period passes. However, that is. I think the case that he referred to was Garza or Idaho versus
Yeah.
Garza or something
It's an
like that.
Idaho case that went to the
Right.
US Supreme
Yeah,
Court, I
it's
guess.
Garza. Yeah,
Yeah.
Garza. Maybe somebody can in the chat can find it and post for people that might want to read it. But the issue that comes down to is I think they're going to be really careful about this because you don't want to have made this plea deal, which is unpopular with some of the family members, and then have this thing backfire on you. So it's a very tenuous situation that the criminal justice system is in on this case for sure.
Mhm. Psychosaurus Rex said, just finish your crime fix episode with chief of police interview. That's the type of interview I've been chomping at the bit for. Great interview. Psychosaurus Rex, thank you so much. We are going to get into that interview here soon. But this is the reason I wanted to talk about this. Because I got that interview. And, I have to mention too, just to be clear, he was featured, I think, a couple of times. He had a couple of clips in the Prime docuseries that dropped last week. And then he was also in the book, in the James Patterson book. And I'm like, what the heck? All these people are talking. I thought they weren't allowed to talk. So I'm like, I'm gonna call
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah,
This
why
guy's
not?
talking. He needs to talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, do people really think like they came out with a Prime series and a book, like overnight when this whole thing, the plea was going?
Right.
There have been leaks in this thing going on for years, and it's just it took that time to put this stuff together and do this, and it's really it's a bad look for law enforcement. I'll tell you, it's bad.
That it's interesting to me that that the government, well, not the government, I guess you don't call them, but the state, the prosecution, Ann Taylor's like, Kohberger's arrested. Kohberger's arrested. Bill, we need Ann Taylor says, Bill, we need a gag order. We should get a gag order. We really should shut this down. We need a gag order. And he's like, okay, Ann, we'll have a gag order. And then it's just nobody gives a damn, I guess. And I guess they find their people that they want to like just talk to or leak to, and people leak. I mean, and nobody. I'm like, if people are handing out hard drives,
Yeah.
Angenette accepts hard drives. Nobody get. I mean, you know what I mean? But nobody offered Angenette a hard drive. But you know what I mean? Like I've kept secrets and keep sources quiet, but like whatever. It's a bit shocking to me. I think we were all shocked when the Dateline stuff came out, Joe. I'm sitting in my bedroom watching this with my husband, and I'm like, I can't believe this. I
Yeah, it
absolutely
was
cannot
bad.
believe this.
It was bad. I mean, there were certain things there that you could tell were just handed out directly from law enforcement, like the video surveillance and some of those other things, and the internet searches. I mean, a normal person can't stumble upon that stuff and get it out there.
Mhm.
So that's a problem. And like I said, we don't have to go to trial, but it would have become an issue in trial.
Yeah. June says, she thank you for the super chat, June. She says, I am not sure about the reason. I know that BK cannot profit from the books or the
No,
interview. I think it would go to the victims' families. I may be wrong. You're right. Most states,
yeah,
I'd have to look at the exact statute in Idaho, but most states have a son of Sam law. That
or a
means,
version of it. Yeah,
yeah, or a version of it where they can't profit, and that that's named for David Berkowitz,
David
right?
Berkowitz.
Like,
Yep,
yeah, the
my
son of
hometown.
Sam. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's why, Joe, you know all about the son of Sam killer.
I was a kid growing up during that whole thing. That's
That's
for
a
another
scary
show.
dude.
Yeah, that's for another show. But yeah, he lived in Yonkers and he was coming down. Talk about a tricky case, right? This guy was living up in Yonkers and coming down as far as Queens and Brooklyn and shooting people in Lovers Lane. So that was an interesting case.
Yeah. Uh, scary, scary stuff. People were scared to death. And wasn't he targeting nurses? I mean, wasn't, or something about
No,
nurses, or am I
n-
confusing it with somebody else?
yeah, he was just targeting people in the Lovers Lanes, right? So they were parked on the
Oh, the
side of the
lovers
road.
lanes. Who am I
Yeah,
thinking about with the nurses?
they
And
were
then,
having conversations. They were just chatting on the side of the road, and he would open the door and shoot the person.
oh, wow.
We're
Okay.
keeping this PG-13.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, yeah. So, wow. Okay. So let's move on. Let's move on. Um, I I want to move on now. So I talked to Chief Jenkins. He was the chief of police for um he was the chief of police for
Pullman.
Pullman back in the spring of 2022. And he interviewed Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger applied for an internship, and he wanted to do this internship. So it's spring of 2022. This is while Bryan Kohberger is still at the oh, sorry. Johnny Knoxville's got a super chat. I'll read this one really fast and then we'll dial back. I got a text. I got a little distracted. If Kohberger did Court TV's interview with a K underscore 11, Court TV's interview with a killer show, it would break the interwebs. I think you're probably right, but he probably thinks, I don't know what he thinks, honestly. He looked a little perturbed during that gag order hearing yesterday. Honestly, he looked really perturbed. I think Ann Taylor wanted it to stay in place. She was saying too, I think she's all hot and bothered about the leaks and she wants to find out who the leaks are. And she was saying that was part of the reason she wanted it to stay in place. But let's go back. Let's go back, if we will, Joe, to let's go back to Bryan Kohberger applied in the spring of 2022 while he was still at DeSales University obtaining his master's degree. He had been accepted into the PhD program at Washington State University, all the way across the country from Pennsylvania to going from Pennsylvania to Washington State. I mean, you couldn't get any farther away from Pennsylvania if you wanted to go into Washington State. And so he applies for an internship, and it's a graduate assistantship program. And look at this. Research interests. This is the resume he submits and updates on March 31st of 2022. Research interests are the causes of violent crime, situational crime prevention, cognitive psychology, legal and forensic psychology, emotion and decision making, opportunity theories, script theory. I look at this and you could read into some of these things. I mean, if you didn't know that Bryan Kohberger was planning a murder, Joe, you might not think anything of this.
No, I mean anybody who's taking a courses like this or degrees like this, you're going to see something similar, right? So I never got involved in the research background. I've been a professor for over 20 years. I never got into the research stuff. I don't have like he has the skill what I don't have, which is that SPSS and all those other things that you add on the computer stuff and about. I'm old, so I don't get some of those things. But You know what? I mean, I have a master's degree also, and I have a specialty in crime and deviance. And I took a lot, I did a lot of these psychology classes also, through the program. But I was doing it for a different reason. I was already working in law enforcement, figuring out what makes people tick in that respect. But there are a lot of academics who have resumes or, CVs in this case, uh, that are very similar. And you would
Mhm.
look at them and they would have the same kind of, stuff on it. I mean, we could argue all day if he should have had a CV or a resume, that whole thing, but that's just picking needles in a haystack over here.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing about this. I look at this, and obviously looking back, I think to myself, was Bryan Kohberger in some ways researching himself, or was he researching just to, now that he's admitted to this, Joe, he's admitted to this, and there are
Hmm.
people still out there who say, no, 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 he didn't do it. There are other
Yeah,
reasons he's pleading guilty. Um, but he stood up in court and the judge said, are you admitting to this because you are indeed guilty? And he said, yes. He's like, yes, I'm guilty. Like because he said, we don't want you pleading guilty to something you didn't do. I mean, I was sitting right there in the courtroom. Hippler asked him. And so, you know, I'm like, nothing about this. If I didn't know who Bryan Kohberger was and that he was facing murder charges, nothing about this would stand out to me at
no,
all. I mean, he's
not at all.
phi beta, phi, or wait, no, I'm so sorry, not phi, psi beta. Sorry, like, you must need to get the glasses checked, but psi beta research involvement. Um, you know, he's a student, whatever. 4.0 out of 4.0 GPA. Yikes. Like, okay, wow. So he's obviously able to get good grades. His BA in psychology, 3.31 out of 4. So during, or BS in psychology. Sorry, again, I can't see. He's got a bachelor of science in psychology. He's got a 3.31 out of 4.0. And then he's got an associate's of arts in psychology. He got a 3.68. He's in the honors program. He's a smart guy. He's able to actually do really well in school. So there's nothing that stands out to me about this as being like concerning or anything like that. Um,
No, I mean, if you would be looking at this resume and saying that, like you said, this kid did his homework, he did his assignments, he did everything he was supposed to do, his projects or what have you, and he's got great grades. So this is, I mean, with somebody without work experience, this is what you kind of look at. How well did they do at school? And he
yeah,
did pretty well.
yeah, he did pretty well. Um, I'm getting people texting me right now. Sorry. So let's go now to his
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, the essay. He wrote this essay. Now, Joe, I find these dates very significant. And I told you why I find the dates, that he updated his CV and um that he wrote this essay. I think these are very significant dates, and I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah. When I
Um
when I, when you sent me this to read, Sister Mary McKenna would have been very upset at him with all those with all those adverbs he uses. It's so full of. I could listen. I'm no English expert, but I could have cut this 3-page essay down into about 2 paragraphs and said the same thing.
yeah,
Oh, it's awful.
it's really long. I started reading it and I was like, "Oh my god, I really can't read this." It's just not, it's a lot of words. It's a lot. It's a lot of words. It's talking about having a dearth of data. This was all about collecting data and trying to use data to help police departments operate more efficiency. And
Right.
I'm going to not bore you all to tears.
Good.
And I am going to just go through some parts of this because it's 3 pages long and it's very wordy. And when I talked to the chief, I said to I said it's kind of wonky. I'm like, and when I say that, you hear about like when I would cover politics, you go to the state house or whatever, and there you got these like policy wonks, right? This is like policy wonky to me, but maybe even worse than that. It's too much. There's too many words. He's applying to be the graduate. He wants to be in the graduate research assistantship for public safety. And it's through the Washington State University PhD program. And it's all about helping these police departments collect and analyze data. And it starts March 31st, 2022, guys. I think this is a very significant date. Remember that date. I'm going to bring you back to it. March 31st, 2022, because Joe helped me click this together in my brain here. Policing in America is increasingly facilitated by the use of innovative and convenient technologies. From the beginning to end of a law enforcement officer's shift and throughout every level of criminal justice agency, the utilization of technology is intimately connected to patrol and administrative functions. Due to the contemporary integration of technology in the patrol function, a persistent and overwhelming dearth of data is routinely generated without sufficient resources for staffing and data management and analysis. This presents a dilemma, specifically for suburban and rural police departments, where there is an abundance of valuable data that is, due to a lack of internal and external support, incapable of being appropriately utilized. Okay. So he just is talking about like they've got all this information and they're not using it right. And he likes to look at stuff and he wants to help them. Okay, I'm boiling this down for you guys because there's a lot of words here saying what I just told you, and I could have said it very much more succinctly. Within the underutilized data lies important figures and findings that would ideally be taken into consideration if a criminal justice agency is to truly foster efficacy and efficiency in the practice of policing. Oh. I mean, this is all like when I worked in local news, Joe, data-driven policing, was really the big thing that they were going for, analyzing stats and stuff like that and targeting hotspots, stuff like that. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, helping suburban and rural police departments who may not really have that much crime in the first place, versus maybe some urban environments. But I this is all kind of coming together in my head a little bit about why he was looking at a suburban or a rural
right.
police department.
There's a couple of things that stand out on this. Like the first thing, like there's a dearth of information. That's because there's not a lot of stuff going on. I
Yeah,
mean, you can't make something out of nothing, and it's just whatever. I don't know what he was planning on doing here.
I think I have a good idea. So
Well, like I said, there was that one sentence in here that plays a big role as far as I'm concerned.
So let's skip ahead, guys, because we don't want to keep you here all night, boring you to tears with there's just too many words in this document. In particular, I would like to work with the city of Pullman, as this city will be my home for my time as a PhD student in the criminal justice and criminology program at Washington State University. Along with the city of Pullman having personal significance, I would also be fortunate to have the opportunity to, through data analysis and research project management, contribute to the criminal justice agency that facilitates the safety and security of the areas within and surrounding Washington State University. Though assisting the city of Pullman is my primary choice, I would be equally as dedicated to working with the city of Pasco. So let's look at Pasco. And Pasco is part of I guess they are part of this program too, where so here's Pullman. Can you guys see my cursor? Pullman's right there on the board, the state line. Here's over here. I mean, Moscow's so tiny, it doesn't even show up on my little map here. But here's Lewiston. You've heard of Lewiston because of this case. But here, let me zoom in and see if it doesn't mess stuff up a little. I don't want it to mess stuff up. So here's Pullman, where WSU is. Here's Pasco. Oops. Pasco is like 2 hours away from Pullman, but he's like, "Hey, Pullman, like if you guys won't take me for Pullman, I'll gladly work in Pasco." So, but he's like, "Yeah, I want to do Pullman, right?" So let's continue. Pullman obviously is something significant to him.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. To me, that's out of this whole document, that's the sentence that stands out the most. What significance does Pullman have to him at that moment of March 31st, 2022?
Well, let's talk about March 31st of 2022 because I think it's significant and I kind of want to unveil why I think it's significant. And I could be totally off base, Joe, but I went back and I looked at the Amazon records for Bryan Kohberger. The Amazon records for Bryan Kohberger, according to the prosecution, I was looking for the exact date that he bought the K-bar knife, but the exact date I couldn't find it. He bought the K-bar knife sometime between March 20th and March 30th of 2022. So that K-bar knife by March 31st has arrived. Amazon has delivered that K-bar knife to his house by March 31st of 2022. On March 31st, he's updating his resume. He knows he's going to Pullman, Washington. He has been accepted into the graduate, the PhD program at Washington State University. March 31st, he's updating the resume and he's writing this wordy, wonky application essay to analyze data, to have access to data for either, hopefully, the Pullman Police Department, his number one choice, but he would also work for Pasco. We know from the Dateline special that they were saying, Joe, that he had pictures of girls from social media, students, female students, from both Washington State University on his phone and from the University of Idaho. The Chief Jenkins, interviews Bryan Kohberger in April. By April, he interviews 4 people for this gig while he's the Pullman police chief. Kohberger doesn't get the job. He doesn't think he's going to fit in with the cops. So I'm wondering, is he like, I got the knife, I'm going to Pullman, I know what I'm going to do. Pullman it is. I'm going to do this in Pullman. I'm going to live out my fantasy in Pullman. It fits in with the Ted Bundy thing. If he really was kind of idolizing or infatuated with Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy also attended school at Washington State. You get that weird stuff with his mom writing the thing about Ted Bundy. I don't want Ted Bundy getting the death penalty. She wrote that little blurb in the paper. I don't get where this is coming from, but Ted Bundy had been brought up in the class with Dr. Ramsland, along with BTK and Elliot Rodger and all of that stuff. Is he thinking, I go to Pullman, if I can get this job, then I can get in there with the cops. Nobody will ever suspect me if I do this in Pullman. And then I'll have access to information and data. I'll know what's going on in the investigation. What do you
Well,
think of that, Joe? I mean, you used to investigate homicides. What do you think about my little theory?
I don't think you're too far off, because when I first read this, I said, first of all, what significance can Pullman have in his life at that point, right? Unless, like you said, he was planning on something else and Pullman was going to be it. The other issue that comes down to is he's looking at himself as the Trojan horse, right? Getting himself involved in the police department, the local police department, getting locked in, keyed in on all the information. So if he does pull something off, he knows exactly what's happening when it's happening. and so forth, like for instance, search warrants and stuff like that. And if you recall, in your interview that I watched this afternoon, Chief Jenkins was very concerned about information from the search warrants getting leaked out with even within his own department, right? Because
Right.
he didn't know what was going on. So I think whoever interns that they might have had going on, I think they were watching him very closely when he first found out about Bryan Kohberger.
Right. And Jenkins, we're going to look at a little bit of that interview here in a second. Jenkins said, um, Jenkins said, you know, Chief Fry, when Chief Fry called him and said, "Hey, I need you to come over to the PD tomorrow. We got to talk to you about something." And he goes over there. I mean, he's literally like, "Don't tell anybody." I mean, he didn't tell anybody in his own department. He went about his own work, waiting. He knew how big of a deal this was. But he was like, I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth. He didn't say this to me, but he was like, "Holy crap." Like, "Holy crap." You know, he was like, "Holy crap," except he didn't say crap, and he didn't say it to me, and he wouldn't. He was a gentleman. But you know, Joe, he was like, "Oh my," he was like, "Holy stuff," like, "Holy moly," like, this is insane. I mean, wouldn't
Yeah,
you
no,
be?
so specifically since he came this close, maybe hiring him, you could imagine how bad that would have been if you have another department and the FBI telling you, oh, the guy that you have running your intelligence stuff is wanted for a quadruple murder. That would have been really bad. So yeah, he dodged one there.
Mhm.
He went with his instinct, and I could tell you from experience, cops are very difficult to work with if you don't fit in. When he first said it, I was kind of like questioning, about that. But then as I thought about it, I said, yeah, you know what? I can understand that not everybody is going to be able to survive in that kind of environment because cops can be absolutely brutal.
Right. And
Brutal.
if Bryan Kohberger, you've seen him during that traffic stop with the Washington State. I think it was the Washington State cop. Maybe it was Pullman, but you've seen him and he's like, "Oh, we don't have crosswalks in Pennsylvania." And actually, I have to tell you, we're going to look at a little bit of the Chief Jenkins interview. I did trim some of it out so it wouldn't be as because I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's interesting." So I trimmed some of that stuff out. I should probably grab the raw and because there was more back and chit chat. But for podcast purposes, I was like trimming some of that out to make it flow a little better. But I'm thinking to myself, he gets his knife. He's like, "Okay, number one, here's my knife. I got the knife." And I don't know how. I've never planned something like this, but I'm just thinking in Bryan Kohberger's head, he's got the knife by March 30th at least. It's arrived from Amazon. The truck dropped it off. Then he applies for the internship. He's thinking about all this, but then he doesn't get the internship, and he's like, "Well, crap. I don't have the internship. I'm not going to have." I could see him with the way he probably thinks very linear. "Oh my God, I don't have the job. This messes up my plan. I was a shoo-in. I should have gotten that job. I'm really smart. I'm smarter than everybody. I should have gotten that job." And then he doesn't get the job, but he's still got to go to Pullman because he's getting his PhD. And then he gets invited to that pool party. He moves out to Pullman on June 30th or whenever it was, the end of June. He gets there. His dad goes to the next door neighbor and says, "Hey, can you be nice to my son and hang out with my son? He has trouble making friends." So the guy, I think it was Christian Martinez, "Hey, we're going to a pool party. It's July. We're going to a pool party." He's like, "Yeah, I got to get some trunks." Then where is it? It's in Moscow. Then he's over in Moscow and he's like, "Oh wow, there's a lot of pretty girls here too. Wow, and this might not be in Pullman, but might not be in Pullman where I can get my little research job and have access to cops and data, but maybe this is even better because I don't live in Pullman and I don't have a connection to Pullman. So I can find somebody." I don't know. This is just me kind of trying to look at things through the lens of somebody like him.
Well, I mean, listen, going from Pullman and then maybe doing something in Moscow in his brain could be throw the cops off in that respect too, because it's a different jurisdictional issues,
Mhm.
which always present problems in investigations. Plus, also the timing, right? Right before the Thanksgiving break when everybody's going home. I mean, you cannot tell me that there are certain things here that weren't part of the plan. Because once I could tell you this from experience, I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
So, you know, and actually, when this case first broke, I was on News Nation. I know you're not supposed to say that, but I was on, and I
Hey,
had said,
we're just hanging out on
and
YouTube
I
here. You
and
can
I
say whatever you
said
want.
that, and I had said about the timing of it right before the holidays, and getting out of Dodge, so to speak. And I said, this person, gone. And the police are looking for somebody who's not even there right now. And
Yeah.
that's something that, listen, he plans certain things out, and he didn't plan everything correctly. Luckily
Mhm.
for law enforcement, because it would have been a very difficult case. That DNA on the sheath, and then the genetic genealogy and all the other stuff. I tell you, if they don't have that, they're still looking for him,
Right. The arrest never happens
right? They're
if
still
they
looking for
didn't have the DNA.
exactly, because everything else is circumstantial. We see a white car in the thing. Okay, how many do you want?
They had zero probable cause.
Right. Well, the
Zero
chief would have,
probable cause for any search warrant without
you
the
know,
DNA on that knife sheath.
every now and then I'd get a phone call from a lieutenant or the chief and say, Joe, we want a white, we're looking for a white car. I'd be like, okay, how many do you want? 10, 20, 50? I mean, tell me how many white cars
Yeah.
you want. We'll
We're
stop everyone from here to Brooklyn if you want.
Yeah.
But
A white Elantra, 22,000.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I gotta put this comment up, and then we're gonna look at what the chief. I'm gonna put the chief on like 1.75 speed so we can get through this kind of more quickly and talk about other stuff. Um, Max Smith says Bryan is likely a recruited asset, role playing a suspect. Joe, would you like to respond to that at all or not?
yeah, I mean, listen, there's so many different things flying around there.
Right.
I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm not somebody who gets involved in some of those things. But I think I think we give them sometimes too much credit and too much things. I mean, I saw a theory today that all the victims are alive in Puerto Rico today. I mean, I saw some crazy stuff. So I mean, listen, he pled guilty. Unfortunately, these four individuals aren't coming back,
It's
and
horrible.
I don't think he serves anybody any purpose other than some academic researchers who will probably quickly find out that this guy is not the real deal, and then dismiss him, and you'll never hear from him again.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion, of course.
Let's look at a little bit of Chief Jenkins' interview. As I said, I'll speed it up because there's other stuff I want to talk to you about, Joe. But Chief Jenkins was very gracious to talk with me. I was very happy to talk with somebody involved in this, even though he was not, he's not like leading the investigation, but he was involved. And I told you guys, I did trim some stuff out for podcast. It has to flow. We want you to find it interesting. We don't want you to just me going like, oh yeah, okay, so let's watch that. Let's pick it up where he explains why Kohberger. I literally am like, why didn't you give him the gig, the internship? Because everybody's always thinking like, oh, he must have thought he was super creepy, but that wasn't the case.
So that position really requires someone who can establish trust and rapport with my staff. And that's not an easy task with law enforcement. Someone coming in from the outside that's not law enforcement, it's difficult to develop that trust to be an effective researcher. And in talking with him, he didn't communicate in a fluid or conversational manner. He wasn't particularly personable. And so I just didn't feel like he would be able to develop that trust or rapport with my staff, and therefore wouldn't be an effective researcher with us.
So it wasn't that there was something like, oh, this guy's got some red flags, but it was more like maybe he's a little awkward. He's just not going to be a good fit.
That's exactly right. I didn't pick up on anything that was a significant red flag. It just was a matter of not being a good fit.
And he does kind of have a more formal, I guess, if you would, way of speaking from the little bit we've seen. And even in his essay that he wrote, I mean, it's very, for lack of a better word, I mean, it's very formally written as you would expect, but it's also, I would say, on the wonky side.
Yeah. I think he has an awkward way of communicating verbally and in writing. And so that definitely was something I recall.
So Chief Jenkins, let's now fast forward a little bit from the spring of 2022 to fall of 2022. The homicides happen on King Road. And no, it's not in your jurisdiction, but my God, it's literally in your community. On my visits to Pullman and Moscow, it's almost like one big community, even though they're in two different states. It was always described to me that, there's a lot of going back and forth, people from Pullman to Moscow and vice versa, maybe for shopping. And a lot of the kids in Pullman know some of the kids in Moscow. So this had to be just absolutely shocking and startling. I'm thinking, my God, 10-minute drive away, 15-minute drive away, this happened.
It was shocking. It definitely was not in character for our region. And we are close-knit communities. We're somewhat isolated. The next closest bigger city would be either a 40-minute drive down to the Lewiston area or an hour and a half drive up to Spokane. So we rely on each other a lot. And so that does make us close-knit, and we work together frequently. And on that day, when I heard about it, I made a cell phone call to Chief Fry to offer any kind of assistance that they might need. And he was actually out of town, I believe, in his car traveling back to Moscow. And so he thanked me for the offer, and he said he would let me know if he needed anything from us. And ultimately he didn't. They brought in a lot of other resources. A lot of times that state line is somewhat of a barrier in regard to the resources, but if someone needs something quickly, we definitely provide assistance to each other.
This had to be something, though, since you also... Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, Joe, because there was some really interesting stuff where, remember when they put the bolo out? And I'm going to get to the bolo. They put the bolo out for the white Elantra, and they only put it out to law enforcement in November of 2022. They knew about the white Elantra shortly after the murders. They had the video surveillance. So what do you I want you to listen to what he said about that. Well, first of all, let's go back to this. What do you think he said? Basically, he didn't think, I'm reading between the lines, he's being very polite. He didn't think Kohberger, with his kind of like very formal, the way he was, he didn't think he was going to fit in with the cops.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, like I said before, cops can be brutal. I mean, if you're bringing in civilians into certain situations, you have to have a turtleback skin, because
Right.
I always say it's like an extension of junior high school. And if they sense weakness, boy, they're going to test it. And it's just something. You're dealing with a very different group of people when you're talking about cops. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And yeah, more than likely he wouldn't fit in. I think it's a good call in that respect. But the part we are going to get up to is that they make a bit of an error here in regards to investigative technique by being too narrowly focused on a certain aspect. I'm not going to blow it, so let's let you
Oh,
play
okay,
it.
interesting. So, I think I know what you're saying. So let's listen to him talk about the bolo that was put out for the Elantra. That was put out to only law enforcement in November of 2022. It then went out to the general public on December 7th, because I was in Moscow and I was like, holy crap, this is the first news we've gotten in like weeks. And so listen to what he has to say.
Their own precautions.
A bolo went out in November, a couple of weeks after the homicides, to law enforcement only. And there were a couple of Washington State University officers who actually noticed that there was a white Hyundai Elantra owned by Bryan Kohberger on campus. It was a different, year than they were looking for. But can you explain to me what happened with that? Because it's mentioned in the probable cause affidavit, but I feel like there's a lot of confusion about that, because people think, oh, well, they were looking at him that early, but that's really not the case, I don't think, because, they then made that a public bolo on December 7th.
Right. The bolo that we got was, I think, identical to the one that eventually went out to the public, but this was on November 28th. They sent a bolo out to the local law enforcement agencies with a vehicle of interest that they labeled as law enforcement sensitive, meaning that we should not share it beyond the law enforcement community. And the description of the vehicle was a white Hyundai Elantra with between the years of 2011 and 2013. And so one of our officers, within 16 hours of receiving that bolo, was checking our parking database that includes information about vehicles that have parking permits or that pay to park on campus, and found a white Hyundai Elantra that was with Pennsylvania plates registered to Bryan Kohberger, but it was a 2015. So the bolo was very specific about the vehicle make, the vehicle model, and the vehicle year parameters and the color. So he didn't submit that as a tip. And then later, that was on graveyard shift. And then later on day shift, one of our officers was driving around and saw that same vehicle parked in graduate student housing. And again, it was not within the date parameters.
So those two officers didn't end up sending that information over to Moscow PD because of the date discrepancy or the model year discrepancy? That's correct. Yeah, it was not sent over to their tip line. Interesting. So did it just come up that they had queried it on that date? Right. When Moscow PD did identify Bryan Kohberger as a suspect and connected him with the vehicle, then they ran some checks to see who had run that plate previously and discovered those two officers had checked the vehicle, as well as a previous traffic stop that one of our officers made on Bryan Kohberger and his vehicle from, I think, back in October. Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward. When is so Joe, I can see you having a stroke over there.
Yeah.
because it was the wrong year by a couple of years. Still
Yeah.
though, still looks like the same. It's very similar.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're looking for a white Elantra. You're not looking for a pink elephant, okay? So you're looking for a white. I don't care what year it is. You just put out the Bolo alert, and listen to that. But also, if I remember correctly, the Bolo alert didn't say anything about the car having a front plate. And Pennsylvania only has one plate. Even the chief there, I think it might have just been a miss, spoke, but he said with Pennsylvania plates. No, Pennsylvania only has one plate on the rear of the car, nothing in the front. So if you have a white Elantra with one Pennsylvania plate on the back, I mean, it was worthy of a notification at that point.
Passing it
Say, listen,
along.
it doesn't meet your years. However, we have a white Elantra with a Pennsylvania plate, only has one plate on it. Maybe it's something you guys want to look at, and then just wash your hands of it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're like, oh, it's the wrong year, but they didn't
Yeah.
pass it along as a tip, because I think in reading the probable cause affidavit, we all kind of thought maybe it was sent over to Moscow PD and maybe it just went into a pile of like thousands of tips and nobody looked at it. That's kind of how we all thought about it. But he clears it up and he's like, no, they didn't send it over as a tip. It just came over
Yeah.
that it had been queried.
There's different kinds of tips, right? The one you get from the phone calls from the general public, but when you have another law enforcement agency calling you up, you just drop and you run with that. So, I mean, talk about a gift at that point. Say, hey, listen, we got this 2015 Elantra or whatever year it was, matching the description, matching the no front plate. Here's the person's name. Here's all the information we got on it. And you run with it. And then, things such as subpoenas and warrants, and maybe, you get the cell phone activity then. At that point, you might have closed the doors on this a lot faster than they got. But hey,
Mhm.
listen, it ended up pretty well too. But the deal is, you run the risk when you have somebody out there who is suspected of killing 4 people of them doing it again, and that's where the urgency has to come in on something
Mhm.
like this. I could just hear my chief yelling at me, like saying, "Joe, are you kidding me with this? Like you didn't think so? 2013 to 2015, you didn't think it was important to tell us?" Yeah, that
Mhm.
would have been a bad. But
Yeah. Let's look at a little more, because basically on December 19th, that's when the FBI goes to Moscow PD, the genetic genealogy people, and they say, hey, you need to look at this guy. And that's when he gets a text from Chief Fry. And I'm not pointing. It looks like I'm pointing. That's kind of funny. I should take a screen grab of that. That's hysterical. Looks like I'm giving him the business and I'm not.
yeah,
But, let's listen to what he has to say the next time you hear from Chief Fry about this investigation.
So I got a text from Chief Fry on December 19th asking if I could meet with him at Moscow Police Department the next morning. And so I went to Moscow PD the next morning and met Chief Fry out in their lobby, and he walked me upstairs. And we went into a room that included their entire investigative team. I think there were maybe 30 or 40 people in that room. And I was the only non-investigative team person in that room. They had held a couple of regional law enforcement briefings before, but this time it was just me. And so as soon as I walked in, I knew that they had something big and that it was somehow related to Washington State University. So they told me that they had developed a suspect based on DNA at the crime scene, and that suspect was a Washington State University graduate student by the name of Bryan Kohberger, who lived on the WSU campus in graduate student housing. And when I heard the name, it's a somewhat of an unusual name. It took me a minute, but then I remembered that I had interviewed Bryan Kohberger, and I told the investigative team I had interviewed him previously for that intern position, and I had his resume and cover letter for that position that I could provide to them. And then after that, I collected information about his apartment where he lived and his graduate assistant student office that he shared with another PhD student, and in preparation to prepare a search warrant later.
Interesting. And so that was back on December 19th that Chief Fry texted you?
Correct.
Okay, because that's the same day the FBI said, you guys need to look at this guy. That's when they got the name from the FBI through the genetic genealogy. So I think that's really interesting. So when he says this to you and you're standing in the room and, are you kind of floored?
The hair on the back of my neck stood up. It was chilling to hear that he was a suspect, and for one, that he had been living on WSU campus, and that I had interviewed him some months prior.
and I know I'm kind of asking you to speculate a little bit here, but at this point he's a suspect. But the DNA is a pretty damning and overwhelming piece of evidence. It's a strong connection. Plus, you have the white vehicle. As far as circumstantial evidence goes, those are two very those are incredible pieces of evidence. So, are you thinking to yourself, I'm assuming you spring into chief mode. I mean, you've got to get to work, but you're saying the hair stood up on the back of your neck and you had interviewed him. Are you thinking, oh my God, we could have hired this guy and he, to be an intern, and he could have been in our department, and maybe this was, maybe even thinking back now, was this going to be a cover for him to be involved in a police department so he could maybe run around and commit crimes?
Well, I mean, that's always possible. It's also possible that this had all been calculated and he was hoping to be in a position to find out about confidential information. And so, yeah, there's lots of possibilities there. But ultimately, I definitely was, I was very relieved that I had not hired him.
Sure, of course. So from there, you go back.
I mean, can you imagine, Joe? You're like, he's thinking to himself, oh my God, we dodged a bullet.
Yeah, big time. He did. I mean, he's pretty much said it, and he also pretty much said that he could have had somebody on the inside, like I was saying before, that Trojan horse, and that's something that will stick with other chiefs going forward. But I hope there's a couple of lessons learned out of this too, right? Carefully vet your people who are civilians who are looking to work in the police department, internships, including students. You still have to do your background checks and your due diligence, and also don't be so stringent when they say, well, if it says only 2011, this is 2012, so it's not the same thing. No, you know what? You got to use common sense and the fact that just do it and let the other investigative body or investigative county say, yeah, thank you, but this is not working out for us.
And trust your gut. I mean, he said he felt like he wasn't going to fit in. He wasn't going to be the right fit.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's a lot of things that we can look at in hindsight, of course. And I'm sure the chief is, going through. I mean, you can remember all these people, especially this Chief Jenkins, because he's kind of like a tangent to all of this. And he just happened to have this run-in with him in regards to this interview. But other than that, I'm sure he's going through, thinking back about that situation. Was there any clues that he was talking to him back then? Did he say anything? Did he lead on? Because and the conversation is something different than what you could read on a resume and what you could read in a prepared statement that he'd give. So getting a feel and having a chance to talk with him. I mean, I could see that awkwardness myself, right? When you just look at when he's dealing with, even in court, that limited time.
Yeah. It's different. Let's listen to him talk about the raid on Kohberger's. He helped organize the search warrants. It was all going to be coordinated and synchronized with the arrest operation in Pennsylvania to WSU. And you have to get to work because that stuff is going to be happening. So what do you do after that?
Well, they had asked me not to share that information with anyone, including my own department. So for me, I was getting information about where he was working on campus and where he lived on campus again, and because I knew that there would be search warrants served at some time. And then ultimately, when they kept me in the loop about when they were planning to make the arrest and serve a search warrant at Bryan Kohberger's home in Pennsylvania, we wanted the search warrants to be served pretty much simultaneously, just so there were no issues with potentially someone else that may have been involved or assisting that could circumvent, those warrants. So we ended up serving those warrants on December 30th. We had Idaho State Police come over to assist our staff with those warrants and doing the searches.
So when do you get the call that, okay, we've got him in custody and you can go in and do the search warrant now?
Well, we had a tentative time set up. It was early in the morning of December 30th. And then we got a call that they had made entry to the house and made the arrest. And then that's when we started the warrant. It was, I think, maybe 5 or 6 in the morning.
And when you get in there, what's it like?
The apartment was sparse. It didn't look like someone was actively living there. It was almost to the point where someone maybe was not planning to come back. So it was not a typical occupied type of an apartment.
Interesting. So, no clothes hanging in the closet, or was it just no books, or was there furniture? Or could you
there was some furniture, very few clothes, not even a shower curtain. I don't recall if there were any books there, but there was just very little.
So Chief Jenkins, you guys get in there and the place looks like it's deserted essentially. So you get in there and you do the work of executing a search warrant. So what do you do next?
Well, Idaho State Police collected some items, and we held on to it. They couldn't take it into Idaho yet without a court order since it's across state lines. So we held on to those items until a court order was obtained, and then Idaho State Police came over and picked up the evidence. We're doing a lot of communication with our campus. Students and faculty and staff were concerned and scared. This was, however, during winter break, so there were not a lot of people on campus at the time, but there were still students that would be coming back for the next semester and parents that had been following this. And so we spent a lot of effort with all of our campus partners, with our Dean of Students office and counseling and psychological services, president's office and the provost's office, just communicating with everyone about what we knew, what measures we're taking to keep our campus safe, and a commitment to keep everyone informed with the information we had.
As the case moves forward and it's heading toward trial, he tried to get all of the evidence thrown out, of course, and those efforts failed. We heard about the stargazing, driving around, alibi, all of these things. I mean, were you following this closely in the news, or was it just something that kind of was happening in the background?
No, I was following it. Very interested to see how it was going to play out. We obviously had a big stake into what had happened and what is going to happen. So we followed it closely.
Mm-hmm. So he's heading toward trial. Everybody's getting ready for a trial. I mean, obviously, the police, the Moscow PD, the Latah County prosecutor's office, everybody's preparing for a trial. The courts are preparing for a trial, and then boom, plea deal. What was your reaction when you found out about that?
Well, initially I was surprised, particularly with how aggressive the defense had been in their motions. And so I wouldn't have guessed that there would have been a plea deal, but ultimately I'm relieved. I think it's a great deal. And I think, I understand that some of the victims' families have difference of opinion about that plea deal, and I don't fault any of them for the opinions that they have. I can imagine what they're going through and how they're dealing with it. But I think in the long run, it's a good deal, because whenever there's a death penalty case, there's always appeals and continued hearings. And every time that happens, that brings everything back up, particularly for the victims' families. And so I think it's going to be good for, I think it does bring them justice. I know it's not exactly what some families wanted, but I think it's a good deal.
So, Joe, I'm wondering your thoughts on, I'm wondering what you think about Bryan Kohberger's. I mean, his apartment's deserted. I even followed up with him. I asked him if it smelled like it had been cleaned, only because, we hear about he's Mr. Clean. He's cleaning everything after this whole thing. And I had interviewed the woman who lived below him back in January 2022, and she said he was always up late at night vacuuming and keeping her kids up at night. He didn't recall that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not surprising that you wouldn't find a lot of stuff in some of the things. I mean, it's usually one extreme or the next, right? So I've been there where you go into this place is very Spartan, where you go in there and it's like you got a hoarder, you got somebody who's saved just about everything. Like you look at the Rex Sherman house, all that stuff, right? So you're looking at two different stories, so to speak. But listen, he was concerned about a mole in his own department, even, right? And he said it. Well, he didn't really say it, but he said it by saying he was worried. They wanted to coordinate these simultaneously so that there wasn't any information that leaked out, whether it was from the court system or from the police department, what have you. So they were very concerned about, somebody leaking out information about what's going on here. So,
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I understand why they do the deal. It saves a lot of time and money. They always forget this. They always forget to tell us that, right? So it saves a ton of money for the state in order to not do the death penalty thing. But here's my question: and if I had a chance to ask the I forgot his name in Latah County, the
Bill
prosecutor,
Thompson.
Bill Thompson. Yeah, I just call him
Santa.
Burl Ives.
Everybody calls him Santa because of the big beard.
Well, I call him Burl Ives, right? So
Burl Ives, right? Yes,
So-
it does look like that. Yes.
Right. So I would ask them, then why did you seek the death penalty out in the first place and put the family through all this at the beginning? If you were gonna if there was a chance that you were gonna end up making a plea deal, don't even put the family through it. So that would be the question that I would ask him if I had that opportunity. But listen, I think that it serves its purpose for a lot of things, but it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth because the way things were handled, right? The way the school
Yeah.
handled this with the crime scene, knocking it down. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that, like, basically it looks like a lot of people didn't want anything to do with this, and let's just close it out and get rid of it and move on to the next thing. I can tell them from experience, this will never go away.
Right. You
This will
know,
never go away.
it is interesting to me though, that you're right that Bill Thompson didn't have to seek the death penalty in this case.
No.
He didn't have to. He could have just said, "You know what? We're not doing that. We're going to go for life in prison because of X, Y, and Z." But he decided to pursue the death penalty as somebody who apparently, according to published reports, does not support the death penalty. He's not a death penalty guy. I guess he kind of leans a little more left, if you will. Not that you necessarily have to lean left to not support the death penalty, but you're right. Why even pursue it? Was it leverage? Was it just like, I mean, that if this case, I don't care what your feelings about the death penalty are, but if this case
No.
doesn't call for the death penalty, what does?
Right. Well, and I also tell people who are against the death penalty, I can understand it, right, in so many aspects. But from a law enforcement perspective, the death penalty plays a good leverage move for you, right? So I wish New York had it on the table so they can then, go to a guy like Rex Sherman and force him to talk and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do to you if you don't tell us what we want to know, right? And
Mhm.
then you can make the deal with it then. But if Bill Thompson was going to use this as his leverage in order to him come to a plea, then he should have made the families aware of this. Say, listen, we're going to put out the death penalty on the table to see if we can make him talk or see if we could get him to take a plea. But quite frankly, we don't think it's best in the interest of justice, nor in the interest of you as the family of the victims. Tell me
Mhm.
how you feel about that, right? I mean, listen, ultimately, the victims' families should be told they really don't have a say. And I know that sounds harsh, but they don't. But you have to respect what they have to say too. I mean, they still have to clean up the fact that how this was even presented to them after the fact, because you get a lot of mixed messages in the beginning. Did they know? Did they get an email to tell them? I mean, there's a lot of things in here that would, if I was a family member, I'd be really pissed off myself.
Yeah, and that's how they say they were notified. The Gonsalveses, at least, to say this was brought up to them on a Friday in a regular meeting. They said, "No way, Jose. We're death penalty all the way. We don't want a plea deal." And they want answers about what happened to their daughter. And then on Sunday, they get an email saying, "Guess what? We're resolving the case and we're doing a plea."
Yeah, that's just bad business as far as I'm concerned.
Like I've talked to somebody I trust a lot, Mark Weaver in Ohio. He has done a lot of death penalty cases, high profile cases, and he said that is a conversation that is had, that is an in-person conversation. It would not be just a brief mention. You would discuss it at length, and you would discuss why you think it's a good thing to do it with the family. And this is not just like a, "Hey, by the way, what do you think about a plea deal?"
Yeah,
Like,
it's just not the
that's not how you
Gonzalez
do it,
family. Yeah,
especially
it's
in a
not.
case this heinous. I mean, all death penalty cases are heinous, or else they wouldn't be seeking it.
Yeah, it's just not the Gonzalez family that's upset about this. I believe there's one other family that's been
The
upset about this too.
Kernodles, yeah, I guess
Yeah,
they're
they
split.
aren't as public. Yeah, they're
The
not
dad
public about it.
wants, yeah.
Well, and I always tell people too, if you're against the death penalty, make it a personal situation, and then say how you would react as a family member if this was your daughter or son. And I think a lot of times people change their mind when they make things personal. And listen, it is what it is. It's part of the criminal justice system in Idaho still, which also runs the risk, right? California has the death penalty, but meanwhile, a law changes everything from death penalty to life without parole too. So
Yeah,
when you
there's a
make these plea
moratorium.
deals, because you make these plea deals, oh, he's not going to get an appeal, and now all of a sudden they're telling you, well, he could still appeal it. Oh, he's going to get life without parole, yeah, but if the law changes, he could get it. So this is not a done deal. This could turn out to be a disaster for the state of Idaho 20 years from now.
Yeah, even though they're saying, "Oh, he's waiving appeals," I'm not buying it, because I'm going to go look at that case you brought up earlier, Joe, that Hitler brought up, but I'm not buying it. Yeah, he's waiving his right to appeal. Okay, fine. I'm not buying that he's not coming back with some petition at some point about something. I'm not buying it. Johnny Knoxville says, and thank you for the super chat, Johnny Knoxville. Matt Murphy said what Bill Thompson did to the families with an email would be a Marsy's Law violation in California. What do you think of that, Joe?
I actually had Matt Murphy on my show,
Oh,
and he is he is totally against what happened, and with the whole deal with Bill Thompson, and he called out Bill Thompson too, and he says, you know what? I hope he sees this interview because he knows what he did. Yeah, Matt.
ooh,
Yeah, Matt was very upset over this whole thing, and like I said, I can understand why they did it, but just be truthful about it. Meaning,
yeah.
just be truthful. That's a bad word. Be upfront about it.
Yeah, maybe I need to get Matt Murphy on here. That'd be great.
He's
Poet,
a really nice guy.
yeah, he is nice. I've interviewed him on Law and Crime. Poet's Dream says, I appreciate you and your channel, Angenette. Thank you. Thank you, Poet's Dream. I appreciate that. Very sweet. But before we wrap things up, I want to get your final thoughts on what Steve Gonsalves has said recently, Joe, and I tend to agree with him. Pardon me. Excuse me. Sorry. He believes that despite Bill Thompson saying there's no evidence of sexual assault, there was no sexual assault, we want to dispel any speculation that there was a sexual component here. Steve Gonsalves is saying he's getting cops and people calling him up after this hearing saying, we're not happy with this, happy the way this went down. Of course, this was sexually motivated. We saw the porn searches on his phone. Dateline revealed those searches about drunk girls passed out, forced sex, all this stuff. I mean, I've been saying from the beginning, not from the beginning, I shouldn't say that, but I've been saying for a really long time, based on just looking at the case and being at the house, I think Maddie was the target. I think he went in there to commit a sexual assault and homicide, and that Kaylee being there thwarted his plans. Kaylee, we know from the court documents, they said they had an expert ready to testify that Maddie was, her level of intoxication, based on what their expert was saying, was so high. And they're college kids. They're out drinking on a Saturday night, doing what college kids do. But she had no defensive wounds and would not have had the ability to fight back. Kaylee, on the other hand, Steve Gonsalves is saying she was awake and fought back. And he's saying the coroner told him that there was an effort made. She had marks on her mouth as if somebody had tried to cover her mouth. Do you believe Steve Gonsalves is right that this was a sexually motivated crime?
Okay, let's before I give you the answer, most crimes are sexually motivated, but it does see a lot of times people get caught up though that the act has to be done or that's the actual intention.
Like that it has to be an assault, but no,
right.
he
That's
aroused
not the
by the
case.
act
Right.
of killing.
It's the excitement. It's about the,
Yes.
yeah, we'll try to keep this PG-13, but
Yeah.
it's about, it's about the excitement and the buildup, let's put it that way, and the lead up to the event. And that's what gives it that sexual component. Okay. Not the actual act itself. It doesn't have to have an essay and it doesn't have to have any of that stuff.
Right.
But, so in that respect, I agree with him. But but most crimes have that excitement factor.
Mhm.
I wish we would actually get away from that term and just call it an excitement factor. But there are a lot of people that are smarter than I am that would
Yeah.
just say no. But listen, it's understandable. He has been the most outspoken family member, so he gets a lot of attention, and he has, and he has to also just be a little careful about what he says too, because he does have a lot of influence in regards to some of these things. And people who don't understand the exact what's going on between the psychology and the investigative angle can take this and run with it on the internet, and that's what we
Mhm.
see.
Right. Yeah, I just think that I think it's not. I understand what Bill Thompson is saying, but I don't think I think he's mistaken, honestly.
I'm not a big fan
I
of Bill Thompson.
I think that this was a sexually motivated crime. And whether that meant he was going to commit a sexual assault or simply that he found sexual stimulation or was aroused by the thought of committing a homicide,
Mhm.
there's still that component there.
Absolutely. And to deny that would be it to me is questionable, because if anybody has actually ever done this for a living or has done the research into this, right? I think Ann Burgess would have something to say about that too.
Yeah.
She's written like the seminal book on sexual homicide, and I think she would have
Yeah.
a different take on, yes. And if for those for your audience that have never read that book, I highly, and if you're into this stuff, as apparently you are, it is a book that you should have on your bookshelf. There's actually two books that you would, well, if you want to buy mine too, that's fine. But there's two books that you should have. You should have Sexual Homicide by Ann Burgess, and you should have the Crime Classification Manual, which is John Douglas, Ann Burgess, and I think it was Robert Ressler. And so if you're interested in what makes people tick and what makes drives people or motivates them to do these things, those are the books that you should be reading, and they're available. They've been updated recently too, and it's definitely worth the read.
Yeah, I've got a lot of books, and I'm turning around looking at the shelf, not trying to be rude, but I was trying to pull it out because I have my this is gonna sound weird. My mom gave me a copy of the sexual homicide book a long
It's
time
it's
ago.
it's one of
I
the
know it
it's one of
sounds
the books.
absurd,
Yeah, it's
but
one of the books I read a long time
um,
ago when I first got into policing and doing this thing, because eventually I wanted to work in detectives, work with detectives in that respect in the police department. That was a goal of mine. So I did a lot of research and a lot of reading and to try to make people tick. It's not Silence of the Lamb, folks. That's not the reality of it. But
yeah,
you know,
I was looking for the book. I was going to show it to everybody. I have that book here somewhere. I just may not be as organized as I like to be. But this is also a really good one. It's called The Evil That Men Do. I don't know if you've read this one,
no,
Joe.
I haven't.
The Evil That Men Do, FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood's journey into the minds of sexual predators.
Yeah, actually, if you want another guy too, Rob Ressler, who was another one of the original members with John Douglas and Roy Hazelwood. Whoever Fights Monsters. That's another good one. And of course, if you're interested in the Long Island serial killer case, you have to read John Douglas's book, Mindhunter, not the
Yes,
TV show, not the
definitely.
TV show, but the book, because there's that thing out. That could be for another show if you want, Angenette, but that outlines that whole thing, because that trial will be coming up in a few months too.
Yes, yes. I want to talk to you about that too. We should be talking about that. So Gray Hughes has a question. What do you think about Kohberger moving to Washington, just like Bundy moved from PA to Washington, and also picking a Maddie in honor of Elliot Rodger, hating his once childhood friend Maddie?
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't believe in coincidences. I think it has to be, looked into a little more in regards to that. I mean, I've seen that floating around an awful lot, but I won't discount it, but I won't give it the rubber stamp either.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that we still don't know about this case until they release all the files, which at the rate they're going, they might never do that. But
Right.
listen, you can make a correlation for sure. I mean, those are not coincidences.
Yeah, we're all waiting for the files. And thank you for the super chat, Gray. It's very sweet. Allie says the Garza case is based around ineffective counsel. That's quite a reach for BK, in my opinion. Thank you for the super chat, Allie. It's very sweet. You may be right.
Allie did my homework assignment.
She did. We gotta
Yeah.
that'll be my homework tonight with the Garza case. But what do you think about I mean, I think that Steve Gonsalves, and I called the coroner. I tried to get her to confirm this information, and when the gag order lifted, I called her and I'm like, "Hi, will you talk to me?" And she said no, she's not making any public statements. But I tried to confirm the information that he had put out there, and the stuff Steve said about her having marks around her mouth, like somebody had tried to cover her mouth. I'm sure that could have happened, and it would make sense that happened because Maddie would have been asleep or passed out, and then Kaylee possibly awaking or being awake and fighting with him. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't see the coroner making any statements, because
yeah.
if you remember, she made statements in the very beginning, and boy, she got eviscerated herself
Yeah.
for doing that. So I think once bitten, twice shy on her part, and I think
Yeah.
she's definitely one of the people I think that's glad that this is all over, that there won't have to be any testifying in this.
Yeah, most definitely. So I think we're going to wrap this up, Joe. It's been so fun hanging out with you.
Yeah.
I do want to make a quick announcement that Stefan Stearns, I was going to be covering that disgusting, horrible case, accused of murdering and sexually battering poor little Maddie Soto in Kissimmee, Florida for years and years. He apparently is going to be accepting a plea, entering into his own plea agreement on Monday. That just broke while we were on the air here. I got a couple texts about that.
A lot
And
of this going around, huh?
yeah, plea bargain season. So maybe he's like, oh, maybe I got to do what that guy seemed pretty smart. Maybe I should be doing that. But he, as far as we know, it's on the child sex abuse material charges. I cannot imagine the state, Florida. I mean, Florida is not Idaho and is not that.
No.
I cannot imagine them with poor little Maddie Soto, them taking the death penalty off the table, especially with that new 8-4 thing they've got going on with the death penalty down there. What say you, Joe?
Yeah, I don't see Florida doing this. Believe it or not, I think Oklahoma actually executes more people per capita than any state in the country. But Florida,
Yeah.
I think, might have the most number of people that they do it to. I don't see them taking that off the table. But the plea deal, as soon as we get off, I'm going to go research it and see what the actual what that entails. I don't.
Yeah.
To me, they had a pretty good case against Stearns. They had
They
a pretty good
had,
case against Kohberger too.
yeah, they have Stephen Stearns dead to rights on the sex abuse stuff. 1,800 images on his phone. I mean, what was he going to do?
Resetting his phone twice, the factory resetting, and still finding all that stuff.
Oh, did it by mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, well, everybody, it's been so great that you have joined us tonight. Thank you so much. Remember to give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. But thumbs up is really important. Thanks everybody for the super chats. I want to shout out those new members really quickly. I told you guys I would wait till the end because I got some complaints about shouting out new members. I'm trying to make everybody happy here, but I've learned throughout life that's impossible. So what I should probably just keep on doing what I do. But June had gifted memberships, so let's shout out our new members. Sherry LR got a membership, and Peppermint PJ got a gifted membership. Kel got one, and Nikki got one, as well as Joe Ellie. So welcome to my new members. Thanks so much, guys. Sarge, it's been awesome hanging out with you.
Yeah.
I am getting ready to go to Boise, Idaho. I'm going to Boise, guys. I'm going back. And so I will be there doing all things Idaho for you on Law and Crime. I'm going to hop on here and do some stuff. And I'm going to try to hop back on here on Sunday and do something before I leave for Boise. So everybody, thank you again so much. Remember, if you've been watching on replay, thank you for watching on replay. And Sarge, thanks so much. I hope you'll come back sometime. I've had so much fun hanging out with you.
Anytime.
All right, guys, we're going to end the stream. Everybody have a great Friday night. Be safe, hug your loved ones, and keep your loved ones safe. And be safe on social media, too. That's another lesson of this case. My gosh. Just really watch out for yourselves and each other. So everybody have a great night. We will see you soon. Bye.